The old adage says that when misfortune strikes, it can unleash a chain reaction of events that's hard to contain. For me, it felt like one thing had gone wrong and suddenly everything else started to unravel. My new job, which was supposed to be a fresh start, had become a source of anxiety. I was still getting used to the new role, and the pressure to perform was mounting. Meanwhile, my employer seemed just as uncertain about how to navigate our working relationship. The salary negotiations had become a sticking point, with me feeling underpaid compared to my previous job and my employer struggling to justify paying me more than a fresher. It was a catch-22 situation, and I could sense another adversity looming on the horizon, one that would test my resolve and force me to confront my limitations head on. It was a strange feeling knowing that the job I'd just landed was still being advertised to the world. The company's job posting had become a ghostly presence, lingering on a few job search engines like a shadow of its former self. And yet, despite having already found their ideal candidate, me, of course, the employer was still getting hit with a steady stream of resumes from hopeful job seekers. Now, I'm not sure what drove him to keep looking. Curiosity, maybe, or a desire to stay on top of the talent pool. Whatever the reason, he'd occasionally dip into the resumes that came flooding in just to see what else was out there. It was almost like he was fact checking his own decision, making sure that hiring me had been the right move. It was a typical day at the office when my boss walked in with a bright eyed young intern in tow. He introduced us, and I learned that this guy had a solid foundation in IT, complemented by a diploma in supply chain management. My boss had big plans for him. He wanted me to mentor this intern, give him a crash course in the industry, and help him develop the skills he needed to thrive in our company. I was excited to take on the challenge, not just because it would be a great way to give back to the community, but also because it would give me a chance to shape someone's career and watch them grow. As we started working together, I realized that this internship would be a win-win for both of us. I'd get to share my knowledge and experience, and he'd get to learn from someone who's been in the trenches. Initially, I had my doubts about mentoring this intern. I wasn't sure if it was worth my time or if he'd even be interested in learning from me. But as we started working together, I saw how eager he was to soak up knowledge like a sponge. And that's when it hit me. If I didn't share my experience with him, I'd be doing him a disservice. He was there to learn, and I was there to teach. So I made a conscious effort to pass on my knowledge to him whenever I could. Whether it was a complex project or a simple task, I tried to break it down and explain it in a way that made sense to him. I wanted him to feel confident and capable, and I hoped that he'd take these skills with him wherever he went next. Time was flying, and I couldn't believe how fast my intern was picking up the pace. He was a natural absorbing information and skills like a pro. His ability to adapt to new situations and challenges was impressive, and he seemed to thrive on the fast-paced nature of our work. As the days turned into weeks, I started to notice a significant change in his confidence and competence. He was taking on more responsibilities, asking insightful questions, and showing a keen understanding of the work. Before I knew it, he was ready to spread his wings and take on more independence. I was delighted to see him grow and develop, and I knew that he'd be a valuable asset to any organization. I was beaming with pride, thinking I'd done an amazing job of mentoring my intern. He'd picked up the skills so quickly, and I was convinced it was all thanks to my exceptional teaching abilities. But little did I know, my moment of triumph was about to be short-lived. The very fact that I'd trained him so well would soon become a double-edged sword. As he'd become increasingly competent, I'd inadvertently set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to my own surprise and discomfort. The consequences of my actions were looming on the horizon, and I was blissfully unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. I walked into my employer's office, cup of tea in hand, expecting a friendly chat about the progress of our team. The intern I'd been mentoring had been doing exceptionally well, and I was proud of the work we'd been doing together. I thought this meeting would be a chance to bask in the glory of our success, maybe even receive some praise for my mentoring skills. But as we sat down, the tone of the conversation took a dramatic turn. My employer's words spilled out like a bombshell, leaving me reeling and wondering what I'd missed. The tea in my cup seemed to cool down rapidly as I listened, my mind racing to catch up with the unexpected turn of events. The conversation took a somber turn as my employer's expression turned grave. He explained that the business was facing a perfect storm, with the market recession chipping away at our revenue. The financials were stark. Sales were down, profits were dwindling, and the future looked uncertain. My employer spoke with a mix of frustration and resignation, his words painting a picture of a company fighting for survival. "We've been exploring every option," he said, "but at this point we have no choice but to tighten our belts." He'd implemented various cost-cutting measures, and I could sense the difficulty of the decisions he'd made. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with the weight of uncertainty. I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. The financial scalpel was being wielded with precision, and salaries were the primary target. My employer had identified the biggest expense, the payroll, and was determined to reduce it. Roles were being redefined, responsibilities were being merged, and entire teams were being restructured. The goal was to create a more agile and cost-effective organization, but the process was far from painless. As the employer navigated this challenging landscape, it was clear that tough decisions had to be made. The question was, who would be affected and how would it impact the future of the company? The words hung in the air like a challenge, and I felt my mind racing to process what I was being told. My employer had been struggling to keep the business afloat, and now he was asking me to step aside. The reason was simple yet brutal. He wanted to save money by hiring the intern who'd been working with me. It was a harsh reality check, and I couldn't help but wonder what this meant for my future. Had all my hard work and dedication counted for nothing? The intern, who'd been a keen learner and a quick study, was now being lined up to take my place. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and I wasn't sure how to react. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent years honing my craft, accumulating experience and expertise, and building a reputation. But now, it seemed that all of that counted for nothing. In fact, it was working against me. The employer saw my seniority as a drawback, a reason to let me go. The cost of my salary, the benefits I'd accumulated over the years, it all added up to a price tag that the company was no longer willing to pay. Meanwhile, the young intern, with his fresh perspective and lower expectations, was seen as a more viable option. It was a bitter pill to swallow, and I couldn't help but wonder if all my years of hard work had been for nothing. It was a cruel twist of fate. The very thing I'd worked hard to achieve had ultimately led to my downfall. My success in mentoring the intern had made me redundant, and now I was being asked to leave the company. The old saying proved true once again: when it rains, it pours. Bad days are like grains falling from a torn bag. They just keep coming until the bag is empty, and it was far from empty. The challenges kept mounting, each one more formidable than the last. I felt like I was being tested to my limits, pushed to the edge of my endurance. But the worst was yet to come, a storm that would shake me to my core and force me to confront the darkest corners of my life. The saga continues, and the next chapter is about to get even more dramatic.
The mud that's about to hit me will be so thick and heavy that it'll not only tarnish my reputation, but also strip me of my title as director.
I'll be forced to trade in my suit and tie for a more modest uniform, one that's associated with delivering packages rather than making high-stakes deals. It's a fall from grace that's both shocking and instructive. If you're paying attention, you might just learn something valuable from my missteps. After all, knowing how to avoid the pitfalls that led to my downfall could be the key to saving yourself from a similar fate.
Stay tuned, because the story's about to get a whole lot more interesting and cautionary.